shorts are like, please, I'm trying. Look at Dalcha. Stop, man. The fans are like, I'm trying.
After just over a year on the shelf, we have the return of the golden boy, Edmen Shahbazyan, now repping Extreme Couture after a complete blitz all the way up to the rankings. He's lost 3 straight and hasn't really had that whole glitz and glam that he did on the way up. He's taking on Dalcha champion, Dalcha Lungiambula, the former EFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champ, who's lost 3 in a row himself and hasn't really had the greatest of run, although we can break it down frame by frame and pick out some spots where he has been good, because in his loss to Cody Brundage, he was beaten him pillar to post until he got caught in one of the sickest guillotines I've ever seen.
I can tell in your voice that you're on the same page as me. I'm too excited for this fight. This fight means nothing in the grand scheme of things, but this fight to me is for the middleweight title of the world. Because for Dalcha, you're right. Like, imagine what our opinions were of these guys when they first came to the UFC. And then think about the thoughts that you have about them right now. Like, for Edmen Shahbazyan, he was the prince that was promised. This was the Ronda Rousey. She was his mentor. He was in her training camp when she was champion. He was brought up by Edmund Tarverdyan. Like, Edmen Shahbazyan at one point was supposed to be Sean O'Malley 2.0.
Yeah, but man,
and I'm not joking when I compare him to a guy like Sean O'Malley. They were on very similar trajectories. Hell, Edmund got a main event of a fight night. That doesn't happen to any fighter in the UFC. And I do think we have to start giving respect to people who do make main events. Like, that's a big deal. There's only a handful of those slots that get handed out. You're normally a top-ranked fighter in your division. I know Kevin Holland was unranked, but I think he gets a bit of a pass. He's a pretty famous guy. Everybody likes Kevin Holland. So Edmen Shahbazyan at one point was thought that highly of in the division, and it is kind of unfortunate that this is really a loser goes home fight between Dalcha Lungiambula and Edmen Shahbazyan. 2 pretty good fighters.
Edmund's last win, there's 2 big names on this card whose last wins came on UFC 244, Masvidal versus Diaz. Edmund's one of them. Darren Till's the other one. They haven't won since 2019. So Edmund's now just recently turned 25. He was 21 when he won that last fight against Brad Tavares. He was a minus 400 against Derek Brunson his next time out. And he did not win that fight.
Can I be honest, though? I bought into the hype after the Brad Tavares knockout because that was really impressive. Like, you can beat Brad Tavares. A lot of guys beat him by decision. It's tough to head kick knockout Brad Tavares in the first round, and that's what Edmen Shahbazyan did. And that was the thing about Edmen on his way up. I had said this a lot about Cyril Gahn, and it made Craig roll his eyes every single time I said this. It was okay. I'm going to get a better opinion on this guy once he is in a difficult fight. Then he fought Alexander Volkov, was in a difficult fight, and I thought a lot higher of him afterwards. That was my issue with Edmen Shahbazyan, though. I bought into the hype because he was looking so good in all these fights. I know his debut was a split decision against Darren Stewart, but still, he was just wrestling for the majority of that. So at this point, he was showing skills in the UFC against high-level guys that are difficult to get out of there, and it was enough for me to really think, wow, if Edmen Shahbazyan can keep on getting better time in and time out, because at the time, this is a 22-year-old who's going in there getting better against fighters who are better. I really was sold, but I do think we have started to see that once he gets into that difficult fight, it does start to get difficult for Edmen.
So for Shahbazyan, the big thing that you really have to kind of reel it in and think about it, 11-3, 10 of his wins are in the first round, and only one of them's by decision. It was that split decision win over Darren Stewart.
I thought he lost.
And a lot of people thought Darren Stewart won that one, but the real kicker was Stewart was able to out-wrestle him in that one and tire him out as the fight went on. And for Shahbazyan, you go back and you look at the 3-fight losing streak. Okay, he loses to Derek Brunson.
He took a lot of damage.
Minus 400 favored. In the third round, he got 10-8'd. The total strikes 99-4 in favor of Brunson. Took on Jack Hermanson, 7 minutes and 11 seconds of control time.
And remember the ground and pound?
Yeah, that was the Hermanson fight was the 99-4 in the third round. So Hermanson had the 10-8, rather for Derek Brunson, it was just controlled all over the mat. And then the fight against Nasruddin Imavov, like, first round was competitive. Second round, Imavov starts to land. Shahbazyan clinches him up. Then Shahbazyan tries to engage in the grappling. You had the front choke attempt there from Imavov. He rolls him down to the ground, gets him into the clinch, and then Shahbazyan pulls guillotine, which then ultimately leads to his demise where he ends up in crucifix and gets elbowed into the ground. So Shahbazyan's had about a year off. For Lungiambula, you heard it kind of in the intro there, DC talking about his thighs. This guy, the heavyweight champ with EFC, knocked out Alain Badeau. Light heavyweight champ, Andrew Van Zyl was one of the wins. Then he comes into the UFC, beats Daquan Townsend, looks amazing. Fights Magomed Ankalaev, gets front kicked. Then he fights Marcus Perez. Now, this is the thing about Dalcha. He's this big flashy striker. He throws a big wild looping overhand right, but he doesn't really do a whole lot more than that. However, in the Perez fight, he decides to conserve his energy, utilize the judo, because he was on the Congolese judo team from 2007 to 2010, and he looked really good against Marcus Perez, who doesn't have the best gas tank in the world. He takes on Marc-Andre Barriault, tries to get the takedowns early,
He
gets
got power barred.
And then he got power barred and ground out. Takes on Cody Brundage, beats him pillar to post until they get into the clinch, and then Cody pulls for that guillotine and gets it, and gets a performance bonus. And his last time out against Puna Soriano, he added a wrinkle to his game. He switched to southpaw and throw a leg kick, and it dropped Puna the first time he did it. And it really did affect him. But as he got backed up, it was that, what was it?
Flatline.
Yeah, it was a left hook, or uppercut, overhand right, and
It was a
he did
beautiful
get countered.
combination.
So, yeah, it was tough. Left hook knockout there for Puna Soriano. So for Dalcha, is he going to be able to withstand the speed and the power that Shahbazyan has in that first round? Or can Dalcha somehow turn back the clock and make it past the second, third?
That's the difficult thing for Dalcha in this matchup. I think if this was his first fight in the UFC, and if Edmen was at this stage of his career, then I think it would be a much more winnable fight for him. I think he would be able to withstand some of those earlier blitzes, but I think Edmen's going to carry a massive speed advantage in this fight. I really do. And even if, let's say, Dalcha hits a little bit harder, I do think Shahbazyan has deceiving knockout power. Like, when he cracks in the first round, especially when he's got all of his cardio, like, he puts guys away. He hurt Brad Tavares with a straight right down the middle, too. Like, he does have a very surprising punching power, and he is a big guy too for the division. And that's the other thing that you have to remember. Edmen's going to be, it says here on Tapology, Dalcha's 5'8". He might look like a big guy, but he's not the tallest fighter in the world. Edmen, in your mind, is not the biggest guy, and then you watch him fight guys like Derek Brunson, and he dwarfs them in size. So I think Edmen, if he's going to win a fight in the UFC, this is the getting back on the horse type of fight, and I can hear it already. Edmen looks good against Dalcha. Let's say he gets another TKO victory, and you've got Joe Rogan saying he's back. Edmen's back, because he probably never watched the fight night cards where he lost. Well, so I think this is a good stylistic matchup for Edmen, but this is a bad stage of Edmen's career. Like, both guys need to win.
Dalcha's been training at Killcliff FC, but for a while there, he was training at Extreme Couture. So maybe the book's out on Dalcha at Extreme Couture, where Shahbazyan's gone to train, because he's been a Phoenix guy for the longest time, Glendale guy, Glendale fighters, Edmond Tarverdian head movement. But I'm eager to see what Shahbazyan's able to implement from that game plan. I'd like to know if he's training with Dewey Cooper, because Dewey Cooper was the Dalcha Lungiambula guy. Black Cobra striking system zone, no right sleeve, hand up in the air. Wow. My favorite coach. But when I look at this matchup, Matt,
Francis needed more.
We only write down the odds right before the fight, and you went down to grab yourself some water. Edmen open minus 450. He's a minus 320 favorite.
Yeah.
Lungiambula open plus 350, plus 247. Now, the Tapology votes are a surprise to us there to you, and I'm going to assume that Edmen's a big favorite there, because both guys are on 3-fight losing streaks, and one guy's 25, one guy's 35.
I thought Shahbazyan would be a favorite, but not that big.
I'll say over under 82.5%.
I'll say over.
Yeah, 812 total votes, 92% Shahbazyan, 20% by decision, 68% by knockout for the 8% that have Lungiambula, 71% by knockout. If the odds were like minus 200, I go, oh, okay, well, that's not so bad on Shahbazyan. They're minus 320 right now. They open minus 450. I like Edmen, like I said a little bit earlier on. Speed advantage, the variety of attacks. But Dalcha Lungiambula, overhand right, southpaw with the leg kick, and then if he can implement his own takedowns, Dalcha is a force in all aspects of MMA. It's just, neither one of these guys have exceptional cardio, and would it surprise me if Dalcha threw up a giant upset victory? Not one bit in this fight.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I do think this is a difficult matchup just from a styles perspective, because Dalcha does throw looping shots. Yes, they're effective when they land, but Edmen throws pretty clean punches down the middle.
Dalcha doesn't throw a jab, whereas Edmen will pot out there quite a bit.
Exactly, and I do like the straight right out of Shahbazyan. It's a very damaging strike when he is able to land it. The accuracy's not great, the output's not great, but again, when it is able to land, it is quite devastating, and I like his chances to land a straight punch more than Dalcha's looping one, so I like Edmen in this matchup. But again, I was kind of ragging on Rogan or DC or whoever's going to cut the promo for Edmen's back. This is a good step. You know, maybe he will show us a new wrinkle, like you had mentioned, being at Extreme Couture, and that's all you can ask for, because you do hate to see a guy who had as much talent as Edmen had, especially earlier on in his UFC career, just go on a 4-fight losing streak and get forgotten about. It would be nice to see him find a new gym, add a new wrinkle to his game, and have some newfound success, because he's only 25 years old. He should be able to still get better, and I think he will be able to in this fight.
Big time matchup in the middleweight division. Both of us going with the Golden Boy taking on Champion. Dalcha Lungiambula, but both of us again with Shahbazyan in the matchup. The next fight on this card, a couple of guys that have trained together, albeit briefly, and Jay Perrin taking on Raul Rosas Jr., the 18-year-old making his UFC debut. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Name Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.